All right, we are back for the third. This is part of the trilogy, the Thanksgiving weekend trilogy. We've had some great shows the last couple of days with Dr. Morris Woodley, with the inimitable Suzanne Muldowney. And tonight we're doing a special tribute to one of our favorite Beyond Vaudeville guests, Mr. Buddy Clayton. Buddy passed away in 2013 at the age of 92. So he's no longer with us. And, unfortunately, a lot of our stars from the Beyond Vaudeville shows don't have much of a digital footprint because they were really doing their thing before all of this, right? So we're going to make up for that tonight with our tribute to Buddy Clayton. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that if you're enjoying these, to please like them. Subscribe to the channel, our Beyond Vaudeville channel. We also have an Etsy store now, plug, where we are selling merchandise like this T-shirt that features the original Beyond Vaudeville sign used in our opening credits. And that's just Beyond Vaudeville, one word, at Etsy. Now, without further ado, I want to welcome our very special guest who's going to help give us some insight in addition to the video and the pictures that we look at of the great Buddy Clayton. So please welcome his daughter, Melody. Melody,
hi.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're so happy to have you here, Melody, and we're all big fans of your dad. And they're actually, from the time that we started doing these look backs and rewinds, there have been requests to please talk about Buddy and have Buddy on. People didn't realize Buddy had passed. So I see there are a number of you already watching. If you have questions, just put them into the chat, and we'll try to get to them. So, Melody, you are one of how many children did Buddy have?
Oh, let's see. He had a few. So my dad was married 4 times. So let's see. He has 1, 2, 3, 4. I think four children altogether.
Okay,
So,
including yourself.
including myself.
Okay.
There, one has passed away, and I'm not really familiar with the first child. His son found me through YouTube, through me posting a video of my dad singing. So,
okay.
I mean, the power of the internet. And I knew my dad had been married, and I couldn't find my half brother, and then his son wound up finding me, and but unfortunately we didn't really hit it off. And then he did have 2 more children, Dee Dee and Mark, and unfortunately Mark passed away, but Dee Dee and I are close, and she's in California.
Wow, we've already learned something about Buddy that I had no idea. And when he would make his appearances on the show, that he had, been married 4 times.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring up some photos, Melody, so we can kind of talk through these. So this Buddy was in the military, clearly.
Yep.
And
Army Air Corps, World War II.
Wow. So he actually was a World War II veteran. Was he actually in combat, or?
No, he stayed stateside.
Okay. And was he performing back then?
So after he got out of the military, he had an honorable discharge. He and my mom were performing for the USO. So they were performing for the troops, and they used to take me with them when I was little.
Wow. And you actually, and you did some performing with them as well as a little girl?
Yes. I used to perform with them as well, and I used to sing, and they would bring me on stage and sing and dance. And, this little girl with the big voice, they used to call me when I was little.
And all right. And here's another. Now, this is a photo. Tell us what we're looking at here. This is Jimmy Hollywood.
So please forgive me on my ignorance of the photo so much, but my dad was very proud of it. I believe it was the Radio Rogues. That's what it was called. The group that he was with, and they would do performance on the radio, and apparently it was a really big deal back in the day when he would do this. And these, I guess you would say, these were all the cool kids back in the day, and he looks like he was having the time of his life. He really was.
That's him right in the middle there. Yeah, the Radio Rogues, they were a trio, and they would do parodies of whatever was on the radio, was popular at the time. And now this guy, we're not sure who he is, right, with Buddy?
No, I don't even know. I don't know who he is, but I'm gonna make a little joke at my father's expense. He would joke that when on himself when he was young, he had a big head of hair. Wink, wink. Because I've seen the comments on the show about my dad's hair.
So, will you confirm or deny that, that your dad had some help with his hair?
I will confirm it. But back in that photo, that was indeed his own head of hair.
Wow, and a good head of Italian hair, because his real name was Frank Matarezzo.
Matarezzo, yes. That was
Wow.
his. So Clayton was the stage name, and I couldn't even tell you. I think so. Buddy, how he came up with even the Buddy Clayton was my pal, my buddy, and that's how he came up with Buddy. And Clayton, I couldn't tell you how it came up with, but that became my name on my birth certificate.
And now this showed up on YouTube. One of the amazing things that happens on the internet is people find these things. And this was a 78 record that he made. Do you know anything about the history of this?
No, and I wish I did. I know when he would sing, because he always sang at home. He sang in that similar style of the time, and he never really talked about it. All he ever talked about was what he would be doing next. And he would emulate some of the things that he did do, and he would sing this song, but he never really discussed it with me. And I don't know if because I was too young, that maybe I really wasn't interested in knowing the history about it. So this is something that I need to look further into myself, because now there's the internet, and back in the day, we didn't have any of this to actually look up. So thank you to whoever put this online, and that I can hear him singing like that with the orchestra. Thank you very much.
Now, here we go. So this is Buddy with your mom, Nancy Clayton.
Yes.
And they had an act where your mom played banjo, which was kind of an unusual instrument for a woman to be playing back then. No? Or
So my mom was a June Taylor dancer, and she was on the Jackie Gleason show. And by being with the June Taylors, my dad was telling me how she, like, part of being with the June Taylors, everybody had to play one chord. And when she met my dad, so they were, I guess, performing in different places, and they came together and they hit it off. And then, of course, being in the entertainment field, like, oh, you can sing and dance. And well, I can't really. My mother couldn't sing for the life of her, but she played piano. She could play everything. She was very musically gifted. And so she started to teach herself. And I still have her banjo, as a matter of fact. And she started to teach herself, and she became allegedly one of the fastest banjo players, either in the United States or the world. And I think Variety even mentioned how fast her banjo playing was.
wow. Now, do you have any idea, like, what, I know you were pretty young at this point when they were performing, but what types of venues they were playing? And
Yes, so I do remember some of the places that they played. So they did play on so again with the military, and I know they were performing in Germany, they with the USO. I know also that they were performing in Florida, but probably Miami. I would be certain Miami. Maybe they became the Snowbirds of the time. They did perform locally in the New York City area. I know that they did that on some of. I know that the cruise ships that they performed on, because they took me with them. And I remember as a child getting very seasick and throwing up all over the place. And it being the help of, it was the Oceanic. I remember that was the name of the ship that they performed on. And I'd be certain it was out of New York City. But I'm not, don't quote me at that. But I do remember them performing that. I know that they performed in Atlantic City often, and it was mostly in the tri-state area that they were performing. I can't say if they performed in California. That I don't know, but I know it was like in the tri-state area, and I'd have to refer back to the brochures that they created. The Latin Quarter, I know I saw that in some of the brochures that they created.
And here is, this is actually from Variety here. So this was when they were playing the Steel Pier in Atlantic City. Buddy and Nancy Clayton are billed in the Steel Pier's music hall as Mr. and Mrs. Everybody and do a bit of everything in the first show of the summer season. Buddy is a neat MC while Nancy contribs a banjo specialty number plus a song and dance bit with partner. Clayton shows vocal versatility by carboning Arthur Godfrey radio shows, along with some of the names who appear before the Godfrey microphone. Nancy scores banjo and whines with Begoff in fast tempo. Pair as individuals and team offer an entertaining 20 minutes of patter, song, and dance. They also display plenty of show savvy. Wow, that's a pretty rave review.
Yeah, and there was others as well that I've seen, but it's interesting how I guess back in the day they were like they'd see something in a news article and then he would make a copy of it and then use it for self-promotion. And so it's my mom had some as well. She was creating a scrapbook of her own background because nobody knew that, what her background was. When she and my father divorced, she just wanted a normal life where my dad still wanted the limelight to some effect. And hence he was on Beyond Vaudeville. And I was a teenager when I was living with him, and he would disappear for hours. And I'm like, where is he going? And little did I know this is what he was doing all these years later as an adult.
So your mom had kind of had it with showbiz, I guess the instability of it. And yeah,
she had enough. They weren't making money. They were fighting all the time. And she just wanted a quote unquote normal life and not have to worry about where was the next gig going to come from. So,
but I'm sure it was, I'm sure in 1966, when this review came out, they were still having fun with it.
Yeah, they were very busy. And my dad used to tell me that prior to even meeting my mom, that from all the club dates that he would do, that he was making some very good money back in the day, and he wasn't saving any of it. And when he married his, I guess it was his third wife or second wife or third wife, she apparently married him under the impression the family said, "Oh, look, he has all this money, he's famous, and all this other stuff." And it really didn't last long, I suppose. I guess. They had their good run. They had a good run of it. And, nobody does this kind of stuff anymore. Unfortunately, the club dates, it was the thing. Although my understanding, like watching European TV, they still do that in Europe,
right.
The song and dance and all
variety
that.
And yeah,
variety shows. Right.
And so a lot of the performers of this time that were playing these rooms in New York were brushing up against mob guys, maid guys. Did you ever hear any stories about anything like that from your dad?
No, and he never. I don't remember him talking to me about that. However, he had a lot of friends, and being in show business. It was a matter of all the people that he knew. And I couldn't say that it was anybody that was mobster. There's a good possibility. I would be certain of that. But no, I mean, everyone that he knew, they were just, fellow vaudevillians, I suppose, and fellow actors and people that he would be on the cruises with. I remember him, he was friends with, they were called the Fondas, I remember, and he was personal friends with them, and they were a magician act. So I remember them, and we actually went to visit them upstate New York, and I remember going to their basement, and they had all their magician stuff, and I was totally creeped out by it as a teenager, and I was like, this is really odd. But to go back to your point, I don't. There might have been, nobody ever would come right out and say, well, I'm a mobster, but
Right.
Anything's possible. But I see the photo that you have of my dad.
Yeah.
So the photo is of our dog, and the dog's name was Samson, and it was a little wiener dog that my mother and my father would use in their act. They used the dog in the act, and I remember my cousin telling me, he goes, "Oh, it's the talking dog," or something to that effect, and that it. I guess if you were part of the family, you became part of the act, and whether you were a child or if you were a canine, we were all involved.
Any idea what the dog would do in the act, or?
Don't remember. They probably just brought the dog out and had him, quote unquote, sing. I just don't remember. And there's got to be some video out there of these things. There's got to be, and that's a classic. If it's out there, I have to see this.
Well, it's a testament to Buddy's confidence as a performer that he was willing to share a stage with animals and kids like yourself.
Yeah.
That he had that confidence. Bruno Bigsley is writing in the chat, Buddy's one of the few from the show that could actually sing. Great, strong singing voice. Well, that's true, Bruno. And we're gonna take a look at that shortly. Bailey George writes, banjo girls were a popular trend in the late 40s to the early 1960s. She was among the best of that subgenre.
Yeah.
There you go.
She really was. She really was. And I'm on a mission to find, some recording of it. It's got to be somewhere.
Yeah. So here are just a bunch of family photos of you with your mom and dad, and the photo on the left. So what was this occasion where you're seated in the chair there as a little girl?
So I believe that was one of the cruises that we were on. So
Okay.
I did have a photo of us coming off the cruise ship, and I don't know where it is, but it is of a cruise ship that we were coming off of. And I could not tell you, it very likely was the Oceanic that we were on. And like I said, they took me everywhere with them while I was still very little. And this photo, it just brings back, really good memories, because I don't have very many photos of my parents in their heyday with me together. So I thought it was really something important to share, and to see, my mom, she's the Irish girl, and here's the Italian guy, and then there's me. So
lethal combination.
Yeah, definitely a great combination. And if you can tell in the background, it was like that crushed red velvet everywhere on the cruise ship.
Now, your dad grew up in Brooklyn. He went to Erasmus High School. Is that right?
Yeah. So he was a first generation born in the United States, and he grew up in, well, I shouldn't say he grew up. He's from started in Brooklyn, but he spent his entire life until his death in Astoria, New York, in the borough of Queens.
Interesting. Okay. And Adam Overton is writing, fantastic to hear about a true history of vaudeville. Happy Thanksgiving to you both. Well, thank you, Adam. And thanks for watching. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, I love this photo. So part of the reason I love this photo is that 3 of these people were on Beyond Vaudeville. Arthur Tracy on the left. George Jessel, unfortunately, I think he was gone by the time we were doing the show. There's your mom. There's Buddy. There's a mystery man, and Joe Franklin. Joe, Buddy, and Arthur were all on Beyond Vaudeville. So we're still trying to figure out who this guy is with the cigar, right?
I don't know. I know. So my parents, my father was very close with Joe Franklin, extremely close. My dad used to take me into Manhattan regularly, and we go to Joe Franklin's office. And if for those of you who don't know Joe Franklin, Google him, look him up, and look at his office. And he knew where everything was. He was an incredibly kind man, very smart man, and I believe he began the talk shows, the first talk shows. He actually began it, and my dad was very close with him, so we'd go regularly. And I remember once he gave me, he knew the I wanted to have lessons in karate, and he knew the guy. He knew everybody, and like I got like lessons to go, in Manhattan for I can't remember the gentleman's name, but a very well known martial artist that I took lessons from. And he'd be like, here, and he'd say, look, oh, I got this. Okay, here you go. Hey, he was very, very kind. And when my mom passed away, he actually came to my mom's funeral.
Wow.
And yeah, he was an incredibly nice person. And we used to go to the tapings with him. Georgie Jessel, my dad told me, I have a doll, and my dad told me that it might have been at this event that he had given me a doll, and I have a picture of like this Raggedy Ann doll or something. And I'm like, wow, so they were very nice people to me. And like, I didn't know, to me, it's like, oh, they're just, older people, and they were kind. And, I'm very lucky that during the time with these people, when I'd meet them, I'm like, I never knew they were celebrities. I just knew that, Joe was my dad's friend, and we'd go visit him in Manhattan and be like, and see what he's doing. And my dad always wanted to get on his show. I think he might have been on his show actually as well. Huh. So,
And he, and you mentioned his office, Joe Franklin's office in Times Square was, it was really like a hoarder situation. Yes. With just all the sheet music and the record albums. And as a little girl, was it a little scary at all, or?
No, because it was just like, oh, okay. And he knew where everything was, which was the crazy part. Even it was like, bless this mess. And he just knew, oh, I'll look for this. He dig through it. I mean, I would say he was definitely a hoarder. I mean, I'm not a professional, but when I Googled him as an adult and I looked at it, I'm like, it was such a small little office that he had, and he had so much, and people were constantly coming in. And I remember his assistant, and he would help out and everything. So, and then you'd call him, like my dad would regularly call him on the phone, or he'd call my dad at home, and he was answering his own phone. And like he had a couple of phones, and really, really nice man. And when I watched the episode of him on Beyond Vaudeville, he got it. My poor dad, God rest his soul, he did not get it.
I don't know. Buddy was pretty playful with us, and and he came back. He was on 3 episodes, and these are all on YouTube. But we had him on with John Wallowich in 1990. He was on again with another actor, Remo Pisani, and Ramon Pena Cartucho, 1991. And then he was on with Imogene Coca and who else? Herbie Stemple was on that in 1995. That was the last time we did a show with Buddy. And we are going to look at clips of these. But I just want to make sure we get through these photos because they're great. I love this publicity shot here.
He thought I think he wanted to emulate Ricardo Montalban. That was his muse. And that's how he was doing this. And
mission accomplished.
Oh yeah, that was it.
And here, this was one of the, you had mentioned earlier, one of the flyers that Buddy would send out, promotional flyers. And I mean, he just was kind of the toast of the town here, and was playing with Florian Zabak and getting all these write-ups. And now, one of the things that I found, because he would send me these clippings, there were some movies that he mentioned that I couldn't find any trace of. There was something with Campus Exposé with William Holden, Thunder Overhead with Raymond Massey and Rock Hudson.
Yeah, I think it was unfortunately I think it was a lot of made up wannabe kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe it was true. Um, I guess maybe to get his foot in the door, he would claim these things. However, there were things that he actually did do that with the internet that I was able to find, which was the cartoon Finnegan's Flea. He used to sing these songs, and I seen it as a kid, this cartoon, and but there, it was live, I guess, at the time. And now with the internet, you could find pretty much anything if it was really there, that is.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me back in the day that when he did the singing voice of the flea, that he never got the credit. So when I watched the cartoon, oh, for sure, that was him singing without a doubt.
Wow.
So
Yeah. He
it was
talked to us about that on one of the shows. Yeah. Yeah. And here's another one of his flyers. But I mentioned these projects in the event anyone watching, I know a lot of you out there are really showbiz fanatics, old showbiz fanatics. So if anybody knows about any of these projects, and if they did actually exist, I'd love to find out more about them. The one more that I saw mentioned was a movie in the works called Heads Up. It was a Burt Reynolds production with Dom DeLuise, and it was supposed to be March 1993 release. Who knows? Maybe these were just made up, but Buddy had mentioned these as possible projects. This was Buddy sent us Christmas cards. Well, actually, he sent us both a Christmas card and a Hanukkah card. And the Christmas card was happiness always, Bud. And then the other card, I didn't know if you were Catholic or Jewish. So he sent to Frank and the gang a Hanukkah card as well. Very thoughtful of him to think that through like that.
He was very, very thoughtful person, and he loved his cards. Loved his cards. So I've taken after him and being very thoughtful as well.
So this is very interesting. This is a letter that I found in the files that Buddy had sent me. Hi, Frank and gang. About thinking about you and the show. Hope you're still on. Nothing happening, just working, doing a lot of shows for older people, wonderful audiences. I worked the Walsh home, did an impersonation of Sammy Davis Jr. After this show. This woman in a wheelchair told me I was wonderful. It turned out it was Sammy Davis Jr.'s grandmother, who was 103 years old. Now, did you know this story, Melody?
No, but I did see a photo, and I could see he was performing, and it looked like it was a nursing home because I saw a wheelchair in the background.
Yeah.
So that is, I believe, to be true.
This story is legit. I actually did a little research on this. I know he was performing at VA hospitals in the 1990s, and sure enough, Sammy Davis Jr.'s grandmother lived to be 111. Louisa Sanchez.
Wow.
And she was indeed 103 around the time he sent me this letter. And she did live in the Mary Manning Walsh home in New York City. So this is why, with your dad, we don't know, what's truth, what's not truth. Some of those movie projects could be for real.
It could be.
Because this was for real, this story.
Yeah, and I know. So one time he did a off-Broadway play. He was doing the voice of Walter Winchell. I remember that all these years later, and I remember him practicing at home, and then he managed to get this off-Broadway play in New York City.
And here's your dad in kind of the final stages here. This was so he did
that was so he was I had to place him in a nursing home because he had developed dementia. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately he lasted for a couple years while he was there, but He loved to wear hats. He always loved to perform, and uh, even though he didn't always know where he was, and he wanted to go home, and he loved to dress up, and in spite of being in a nursing home himself, that he still wanted to sing. And he had breathing problems, and actually the singing was the best thing for his diaphragm. And I did post on YouTube him singing while he was in his wheelchair, and everybody in the nursing home was supporting him. And he came back to his old self. And music, there's a program called Music and Memory, and how music really does help stimulate the mind and makes them more present. So seeing him like this, it was very hard because we were so close. He was like Jack LaLanne. He was always working out, and then to see him in the decline, it was very hard. And it was very difficult to let him go, because I think if his mind would have stayed, he would have lived to be much older man. And I know he would have totally loved to see himself, and he would have been on the show, and he probably would be harassing everybody. Put me on, let me sing, let me this, let me do that. And indeed, he used to do corny jokes with me as a kid growing up, and I hated it. But his singing was spot on, and he practiced and he practiced and he practiced. And he used to give me the corny jokes. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall with practice? That's what he used to say to me all the time. So making me bring back memories. So thank you very much. I don't normally think of these things, talking about him. So it's bringing back.
And thank you for posting that video. Anyone watching, don't go now, but after this, you can go on YouTube and do a search for Buddy, and you'll find the video that Melody posted, where Buddy, yes, he was in the home. He did have dementia, but he was still singing and performing. Melody, I presume the name is no coincidence that you were given the name Melody?
Yes, so it is certainly no coincidence. People make assumptions that my parents were hippies and they named me Melody. And no, and I got named Melody because my parents were in show business, and I wound up being in show business growing up. And it's having parents who are entertainers. And I was supposed to go on a road show. I was for Annie as a kid, and I did commercials, and I did the Bronx Zoo commercial actually with the Simon and Garfunkel song, "It's All Happening at the Zoo." Still trying to get a hold of it myself. My dad took me to my auditions as a kid, but because my parents had gotten divorced, and I just didn't want to do it because kids were making fun of me seeing me on TV, and I didn't want to do it growing up, and I got out of it, and now I kind of regret it a bit, but at least I'm able to tell some good stories, and and do things like this, and it's fun. It's definitely fun. And but yeah, having parents who are in show business, definitely a different life. And unless you have come from it or around it, it is definitely not boring. I'll say that. Definitely not boring. And all the people that my father met, I mean, like, he took me to California, and I met his former the president, Kathy Dowd, Penny Singleton. Kathy Dowd was my agent back.
Oh, Penny Singleton. Yes, he mentioned her on the show. Yeah.
Penny Singleton. So I did get to meet her when we went out to Los Angeles, and I don't know how my dad knew all these people, but we wound up going to Beverly Hills. We didn't have a car. He didn't drive. He drove, but he didn't have a driver's license. Go figure, New Yorkers. And we wound up going to the house in Beverly Hills of the Tin Man's wife. I can't remember her name right now. And she wound up taking us to this restaurant and I have photos, by the way, in her Rolls Royce. There's this like 90-year-old woman driving us around Beverly Hills, taking us to like this exclusive restaurant where all these celebrities were. And I just remember my father telling me, he goes, "Don't bother anybody. Don't talk. Don't ask anybody for, anything. Just leave them be. They want to have their dinner, and just leave them be." So, but it was like, but that was the life, even here I am. I was like 15 years old. It was the first time I went out to California with my dad, and it was a basically like kind of a business trip to drum up business for himself, meet these people and so forth. And, meeting, and I don't know who else he might've met while we're out there, but that was kind of it. Like we'd always have the odd people calling him, and like he was friends with, there was another person, her name was Jackie Tondawanda, and she was and I remember her very well because I used to talk to these people on the phone, because back then you didn't have answer machines. You had to answer the phone.
You were the answering machine.
I was the answering machine. So I would answer. And she was the first female boxer, African-American boxer. Wow. And she was a close friend of my dad's. And all these people would be calling I cared, but I didn't care. I was a teenager, and I was just like, oh, okay, there's another strange person that's calling. And
he also opened for Jack Jones, right?
Jack Jones?
Was it Jack Jones you had mentioned, or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
Where did I see? Oh, you know what? That might have been from one of those articles that I read. So
yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I literally have to go through these articles and do deep dive searches, and go and check museums and so forth to see if there's any video or anything like that. And thankfully, people have been putting up these different things on YouTube. So I'm a part of a banjo group to see if anybody might know of my mom, and maybe subsequently my dad. So internet sleuths, please have at it.
We're hearing from Bailey George says that Campus Expose, one of those movies I mentioned earlier, was a real film. Well, Bailey, send me the credits. I'm really curious about that one. So Matthew Fuller is asking, what crooners greatly influenced Buddy the most? Do you know who he might have been fond of in particular?
So it's really funny, I guess, with performers that with him particularly, he would get jealous of people. I swear. It was like, oh, and he would critique them. And like, was it Tony Bennett? Tony Bennett he liked, but Tony Bennett is actually from my neighborhood of Astoria, New York.
Right.
And so he's a native New Yorker. So he appreciated Tony Bennett's work. He appreciated Frank Sinatra. So he would, I don't know if he emulated them, but he certainly would sing as the crooners would. Because
it sounds like he liked the Italian guys.
Yeah, and that's what he did. And he did have a type, and that's what he went for. He knew his type, and it was the mobster type. That's what he would do the auditions for. So he didn't, I mean, he was good at doing voices and improvisation. He was good like that. But like I said, his jokes, he tried on me so much. Like, I was a hard audience, and I guess that's the best thing, you're a child, that you're going to try all your material out and to see how does it go. And I was a hard audience. So the only thing I really enjoyed was his singing. That was the only thing I enjoyed.
We're hearing from Media Funhouse. That must be Ed Grant, I would imagine, saying a great Thanksgiving 3-play on the Rewind, Rich, a lovely tribute to Buddy. Thank you, Ed. We're doing our best here. So, Melody, I want to show some clips. We've been talking so much about Buddy and watching all these pictures. I presume that those of you who are tuning in have seen these clips of Buddy, but these are just a couple of quick clips of him performing, doing his impressions. He was quite the impressionist. And as someone had mentioned earlier, an example of his pipes, how well he could sing. So let's take a look at some video.
Voices too, but you did some of the singers, but you also do like a baby voice that you do.
Yes, Mommy, I want some milk, please, Mommy.
I did that on a commercial. I did 2 voices, a boy and a...
Okay. Now, David, let's be courteous now to our guest. Now, aside from that, you do other voices. You do Mayor Koch and or the former Mayor Koch and.
Well, it's wonderful to be here tonight. I may not be mayor anymore, but I still love New York City. What can I tell you?
Very good. Thank you. Maybe there's another impression you do of Archie and Edith, the Bunker.
Oh, yeah. Archie and Edith Bunker. Songs that made the hit parade. Girls like us, we had it made. Oh, those dances that Glenn Miller played. Sing it, you dingling, sing it. Those were the days.
Mayor Koch, what is this wonderful thing called love that never came to me? The other day I put a letter in the magazine that I was thinking about getting married. Ever since then I've been getting a lot of queries. I'm a little worried. But if you can't make it in New York, you never can make it anywhere, right, buddy? Oh, yeah, you never know that you have lived until the day your little heart you give. But until then, you are never gonna know, baby. You never know. Baby, you know I love you. Tell me you love me too. Oh, yeah. I believe that someone in that far somewhere, he hears every word. Every time I hear a baby cry, or touch a leaf, or see the sky, then I know I believe. Thank you.
Well, I know I couldn't do that.
It's
You're getting a little teary-eyed seeing your
yeah,
dad perform
yeah,
there.
very
Yeah.
much so, very much so. I miss him terribly, and having this available, that anytime I want, I can hear him, and that he has a bunch of grandchildren, and they can watch him, and this will live on in infamy, and he will live on in infamy. And I know it would, if he was still alive, knowing that, he would probably be still making videos. I'd be certain of it.
How did he have professional singing training? Do you know? Or-
So looking at the resume that I found, so he alleged a bunch of stuff. So I found a resume that I know it was not him typing up. Somebody else did it for him. So the training was from the Academy of Dramatic Arts, Fred Hurley, Arthur Storch, and Emily Adler. So voice, he has written George King, diction and phrasing, speech, Mary Winston, and dance, Phil Black, tap, and jazz. So I don't know if he really did go, or I mean, I would imagine he had some training. I just don't know how or when. Now I know that his father immigrated from Italy, but he played multiple instruments. He was deceased before I was born, so my dad couldn't play anything, but he could sing.
Yeah, and well, I didn't recognize those names on the resume, but they sounded like legitimate names, I guess.
I never knew what was truth and what wasn't, and because he just was always trying to promote himself, and I guess back then that's what you did. I don't know. I really don't know, like, because how could anybody check? Really couldn't check back then, I suppose. So,
He showed up on an album, a compilation album with Tiny Tim, the Mike Cassone LP. I don't know if you know about this, but
no.
Those of us that are into Tiny Tim are familiar with this, where he did a song, "We Love You, America," that he sang.
That was so I remember. I remember very clearly and well about I Love You America. I could still hear it in my sleep today because he sang it over and over and over again. And it was We Love You America was written by a priest. And I remember he made the 45 with it.
Oh.
And apparently nobody wanted to pick it up. And the rights got sold to somebody. And Father Grace, that was the priest's name.
Oh, I remember him mentioning Father Grace.
Father Grace, but he would sing this song all the time. It gets a little old when you're a kid, and you hear somebody singing the same thing over and over and over again. So yes, but he was a perfectionist.
I think he clearly practiced and rehearsed a lot because that one of the clips that I just showed where he was lip syncing to a pre-recorded tape, I always tried to encourage him not to lip sync because I never trusted that technically that we'd be able to pull it off with the booth there and the studios that we used. And but yeah, so sometimes he would play to musical accompaniment, but sometimes he would actually do the lip syncing, and he was pretty spot on, and that's not an easy thing to do. It clearly he had practiced that, Bailey George is writing, Nancy played a tenor banjo, which only had 4 strings, as opposed to the more popular 5-string banjo popularized by Earl Scruggs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had her banjo fixed. I went to I forgot the name of the place on Staten Island where George Harrison had brought his guitar or banjo, I think banjo over there. I had it fixed, but the neck was broken, so I can't play it, unfortunately.
Okay.
So it's just it looks nice, but that's about it.
Was there, earlier we were talking about Joe Franklin, and he did some sort of benefit for the Policemen's Benevolent Society or something?
So I remember growing up, my dad used to do perform for the New York City Police Benevolent Association. And I remember as a teenager that the 114th precinct came to our house, picked my dad and I up, and I remember being in the back seat and not under arrest. And they took us to the facility where my dad was performing, and I believe Joe Franklin was there as well. And if I look through, there's so much papers that I have. I know that there's some type of a syllabus of some sort with everybody, all the performers, including Joe Franklin.
Okay. And when he was doing his impressions, they were good impressions, and I guess that was why. What was the group that he was with, the Radio Rogues? Yeah. I guess that's why they kind of took him under their wing, because that was their thing too, that they would do these impressions of the contemporary artists. And would he pepper in those kinds of impressions just around the house? Or?
So watching what he performed on the show for you. Oh, I had the regular show at home. It was regular and often. And he was always doing this at home. So whether it wasn't even a matter of he was rehearsing, that was him all the time. And, it's funny for him that when he was on, he was Mr. Showman, but then, he was a regular man. And there was times that he just wanted to decompress and watch TV and just, be a regular guy. But when he'd be out on the street, it was Mr. Show Business. And it was funny. He would always tell me, he said, Melody, when you're going out, he goes, always wear a little rouge. Notice the verbiage that I'm using here. Wear a little rouge and a little bit of lipstick. He goes, you never know who you're going to see on the street. So this is my dad giving me advice on how to wear my makeup and do my hair and stuff like that. Being a performer, that's what he did. And, he always would critique. And then for me, even with singing, he had a tape recorder and he would say again, and I would sing again, and record it. No, you're not hitting the note high enough or the low or whatever it was. And he was tough. He was tough like that. So, the way he was for himself, that expectation was for me. And I can imagine with my mom as well, as well. But yeah, he was hard on himself. He was hard on others, and he always was critiquing other people as well. We'd watch TV, and he would make his comments about how their performances. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like he was a little like, when he would go out at showtime, just walking in the street, and Bob Hope. There were stories in how he would leave his home in Toluca Lake, and he'd walk down the main drag there, and there was a real estate office on the street, and they can remember him stopping in front of their window on the sidewalk and starting to do a little soft shoe for them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, give him, give him an audience. He just totally on. And yeah, he was like that. No matter where he went, he would, he'd always sing, perform, do things of that sort, because that was his nature. And he was an entertainer. And from what my understanding was, talking to him from when he was very little. And it was funny when so after he and my mom divorced, so he would go on cruises, and he would, I think he was, I don't know if he was just the entertainment or if he was the MC or what exactly his role was per se, but
Yeah.
he would come back and he would tell me these stories of the people he met, the things that he did. And as an adult, I can tell you this, it completely inspired me as an adult, and to go visit a lot of the places that he'd been to, and to travel the world. And he'd always bring me back something from his travels. And I do the same thing with my family. So every time I travel somewhere, I will, bring something back from my travels for my family, and always have an adventure. And that's what my dad did. And he would take me on adventures growing up. He would take me to museums. New York City is full of museums, because as a child, he had the visitation rights with me on the weekend, and he would take me everywhere. So it was usually free, but those were the best things to do in New York City. So the zoos, the museums, and he really would take me to, expand my thinking and, who I was as a person. And he was great like that with me. He really was. And he did everything for me. And I was very blessed to have him as a dad, and to pay tribute to him today. I know he's listening somewhere and going, yes.
Well, we were very lucky to have your dad 3 times on the show. I tried to get him to do some of our live shows, and he just I don't know, that we never were able to make that happen. But he was great on the shows. I'm so glad that they exist, and that everyone watching here can watch him whenever they want to see Buddy. He's right there on those old Beyond Vaudeville shows. And so, Melody, I really appreciate your taking the time to do this. And I thank everybody for watching and joining us here. If there are others you'd like us to do tributes to, we're probably already thinking about them, but let us know if there are others, just as you did with this one. You wanted to hear more about Buddy, and now we know a lot more about Buddy. So I thank you so much, Melody, and yeah, wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, and keep coming back, and like us, and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you again, Dee Dee, Adam Trigaboff, Toto, Dane, everyone else that we talked to earlier. Thanks again. Good night.
Thank you.